Flying Scorpion here. Let's talk about some of the changes in update 27.4, specifically defendable objects, healing, and AoE damage reduction changes. So, long story short, Digital Extremes made it so that pretty much any Warframe that has a healing ability or like weapons with healing, like for example the Sancti Magistar, for example, or Vazarin Dash, can now heal objectives again. Now some of these things that were always able to heal objectives, like for example Vazarin Dash and Korra's Venari on the healing mode, but those were taken away and they were reintroduced after this balance pass. And this has been a really contentious issue. You've got some players that are happy with it and some other players that are really unhappy with it, and we're at odds with one another. You got people arguing back and forth on the forums. So let's go to the forums and take a look at what's on there. So we've got some comments like Vazarin is utter dog shit now, or rest in peace Vazarin. I'll put some on the screen here. Also, thanks you so much for killing Vazarin. I'm sure you know healing dash is easy and not to hit with 100% accuracy. Allies how jump here and there, and you just destroy a focus school. Well, we'll all stick to Zeneric. I cannot wait to see what you'll do to focus with the 3.0, because only Zeneric is useful now. My response is there, you can see it. I think what they did with Vazarin was fine. Invincibility was overpowered, and honestly, is the game not easy enough? Power creep has been a problem in Warframe for a while, so it's nice to see the devs using restraint in buffing or increasing the power levels of the players. I, for one, need a challenge in my game, otherwise I get bored. Here's another one. 500 flat value over 5 seconds is not the way healing should work on objectives. Remember, damage scale with level, question mark, because at some point 100 hit points per second do nothing. You should bump any flat value health over X seconds to percentage value health over X seconds. And then my response to that was, that's the point. The point is for late game content to be challenging and unforgiving. If everything scaled to late game content, then late game content would be trivially easy, just like early game content. This decision of DE was obviously made as a balancing decision. Why complain? You're getting healing on objectives, something that didn't even exist before aside from Vazarin, Dash, and Korra. This is a buff and decrease in difficulty. I think it's fine. Now, it's a buff for a lot of things, but it is a nerf to Vazarin Dash. I will admit to that. But do you honestly think Vazarin Dash wasn't overpowered? I mean, think about it, guys. You could sit there with a maxed rank Magus Lockdown and maxed rank Magus Repair, Void Dash through the objective. It didn't have a cooldown time. You could just wait till it's done its invincibility timer, Void Dash through it again. You could have everything on lockdown until the end of time. That wasn't overpowered? That trivialized the game. It did trivialize the game. And here's the extra bonus part I didn't even mention. It healed it by 60% of its hit points. So if that thing had like 50,000 hit points, you're healing tens of thousands of hit points over a matter of a few seconds, and people are arguing that that wasn't overpowered, that that's the way it should be? Come on, guys. This is why we have power creep in Warframe. It's because the developers are human beings and they're influenced by the feedback that the players have, and they bash the developers whenever they nerf things, and then they praise the developers whenever they buff things or when they add things that are overpowered to the game. So what happens there is the power curve goes up. The developers are more likely to leave it alone if it's overpowered, and then to buff something if it's underpowered. And it slowly skews the balance in this direction where we're slowly getting more and more power creep in the game. And then that reaches a point where old content, like for example the original Vauban or Ember, for example, become obsolete and underpowered, and then they got to go back and buff that stuff, and it just becomes this self-reinforcing spiral out of control where the game is descending into the point where it's so easy you can roll your face across the keyboard and come out with a trophy. I won because I rolled my face across the keyboard and I beat these enemies. Like, come on, guys. So anyway, I was chatting with other people in my clan in the Discord chat about the changes here, and somebody pointed out that, hey, the defense objective has like 50,000 hit points. 100 hit points per second or 50 hit points a second is nothing in the grand scheme of things. And I was like, wow, that's actually a really good point. So I did some math, and I found out that if you're healing it for 100 hit points per second, and if it has 50,000 hit points, you're only healing 0.2% of its total health per second. And if you're healing for 50 hit points per second, you're only healing it by 0.1% of its total hit points per second, which sounds really bad. So I decided, hey, I gotta actually try this out and play test it, right? Like, you can't just judge it based on some calculation you did and what you're writing down on paper, or people like losing their fucking temper over it. So I went into a game and I played for a defense mission for about 2 hours. And I just went and recruited a couple people. And as you would expect, after like 40 minutes or an hour, one person left. And then after like an hour and 20 minutes, another person left. And it was just me and one other guy. And the enemies got to around level 120, 130. And it was at that point that we finally started getting to the situation where we weren't fully healing the defense objective up between rounds. And it was obvious that we had to extract. We probably weren't going to make it another 5 rounds unless we like really started getting crazy with our Magus lockdown. And what I like about this is that I wasn't playing a super tight game. Like, if you're watching the background footage, you can see, like, I'm running away from the objective. I'm taking guys out, like, on the other side of the tile, and I'm not concerned about the damage that the defense objective is taking. Like, I'm just going back once in a while, clearing it off, and then going around doing something else, right? This is actually really nice. It creates a very forgiving and loose way to do a defense objective. You don't have to necessarily stay on top of it constantly. And I agree with the limit, instead of having a percentage of its total health points, being a flat number, because as the enemies scale up in difficulty, you actually have to play better. Like, that's the whole point of late game content, is you actually need to play better in order to get through it, you as a player. I forgot to mention, I'm not healing it by 100 hit points per second, I'm healing it by 50 hit points per second. That's what they did with Oberon's ability. So you can heal it by even more with different Warframes, and I could be wrong here, but when I look at Oberon, it doesn't say anything about it not stacking. So you might be able to stack 4 different Oberon players and heal it by 200 hit points per second, which would be absurd. You can also see that there's a Hildren in the party, and once in a while the Hildren had her third ability, I think it's Bastille or whatever, on the objective, and that does regenerate its shields a little bit, but for the most part, this was mostly down to just me as the Oberon player healing that thing. But yeah, it seems fine. Honestly, level 120 to level 130 enemies is a little bit higher than what you would expect for 90% of the game. Like, endurance players are in a niche environment, and this applies to almost everybody else in the game. Pretty much everyone else. When do you see enemies that are level 127? Not very often. Almost all the content is level 100, maybe level 120. So, yeah. And another thing I want to point out is that even though 50 hit points per second or 100 hit points per second doesn't sound like much, but if you're constantly healing the objective, there's actually a lot of downtime in between defense waves. And think about it, when you're getting towards the end of a wave, you're starting to get to like the last 5 enemies, the last few enemies, and they're not really doing much damage, or they might even be like stuck in a corner around in another room or something like that, not even hurting it. So there's actually quite a lot of time where you're just healing the defense objective and it's not taking any damage whatsoever. So it doesn't sound like it's a lot, but guys, like, just try it, man. It's really not that bad. And to the people who are going, oh, Vazarin is gutted, Digital Extremes is bullshit, they're nerfing things. Well, come on, man. Like, anyway, that's all I gotta say, guys. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. For one, and I'll say this one more time, I think that this is a good change because it opens up diversity in playstyles. Now you don't necessarily have to rely entirely on a snow globe or on limbo or whatever. You can try out different ways of doing defense objectives, and it is pretty strong, man. Like, these are level 127 Corpus dudes. They actually do pretty decent damage at that level. So anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Take care.